All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SAS Innovate. My name is Joy DeBolt, and we're very happy to have you here. I have the great pleasure of introducing our session speaker, Shireen Eid. I will hand it over to you, but let us give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Can I have a thumbs up if you can hear me on your headset? Wonderful. Am I too loud? Well, no, I can be louder. All right. And before, I usually do this at the end, but I'm afraid that I'm going to get riled up, so I'm going to do a selfie with you today. Is that okay if I start off with the selfie? Okay. This is like my favorite part of all of the things that I do. Everybody say, SAS Innovate. All right, awesome. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, do that here. All right, so let's talk about how we can, we want to unify protocol generation, but it's not just generation, that's like the end product, right? So first of all, I want to thank you for coming today. I'm really excited with the turnout, and I'm really excited to get your feedback, right? This is just a prototype because Shireen likes to be curious. I have really cool people to work with and explore with, like Brittany and like Sundaresh. And they make things happen for me. So I come up with the idea, and I don't have to be high or drunk to do that. I'm fascinated by that. But I come up with the idea and we explore what are the possibilities, right? And so I want to be able to say, okay, how can I take protocols that I have today? How many here work on protocol generation for a kind of study? Right, whether it's observational research or if it's phase 1 through 4, right? You have to, most of the time, you're either working with a clinical researcher or you're working with somebody who's been in the industry forever, or this is how we've always done it, or you rely heavily on the EPIs and the medical writers to go back to those old protocols that you actually had to glean through anyways. And it's very manual, it's very long. Right? Now, sometimes we try to use ChatGPT, but how many of you are allowed to throw your protocols in ChatGPT today? No, right? Because there's policy regulations within your corporate IP, because we don't want that in the public corpus, right? And so, not yet at least, right? Maybe when we go, I'll have a regression to the mean, and then they are going to pay the smart people to come up with new ideas, right? That's what we're banking on. But then once I actually go through those protocols, I want to be able to then benchmark, right? How did my previous study perform? Did I have to do an amendment? Did I have a lot of patients to loss to follow-up? Did I not hit my primary or my secondary endpoints in a meaningful way? Was that too close to the edge, right, of whether or not this was an acceptable efficacy trial or not? And then I want to be able to simulate, right? Can I do some what-if scenarios and save me some time, and also try to figure out a probability of success? Who here has worked on a probability of success for any of your trials, right? And those analytics are not easy analytics because you don't always have all of the data that you would love to have to be able to make a meaningful decision, right? And then I want to be able to generate my protocol. Where can I automate this process, which is a very manual and disjointed process today, right? Well, enter SAS Viya. SAS Viya allows you to have a unified platform to do many of these tasks. One of the most wonderful things about SAS Viya, to me, is that I don't only have to use it for one solution. It's not a point solution. It's something that I can deploy across the enterprise and have many, many people do many, many things on it very interchangeably and interdimensionally, right? And so one of the things, which is our blueprint, right, for developing drugs and studying associations, is that protocol, right? That's how I'm going to know what I'm going to do. So first, I want to be able to say, I can ingest any protocol in any format, any document in any format, and then actually start looking at how I can unify, ingest, take the components of, so I can start studying and analyzing it. I want to functionalize, is that even a word? Functionalize the components of that protocol, so I can take these Lego bricks apart and say, hey, you know what? Here are all the yellow bricks. Here are all the red bricks, because when I come to rebuild my Lego house, I want to know which brick worked best, right? Which approach works in this thing that I'm trying to build, right? And then I want to be able to take that information from this past study data. So I'm getting my protocols and all of the documents and maybe some of the data, whether it's performance data from your ClinOps folks, or if it's the actual study data results, right, that you have some of the safety data or you have some of the data captured in the EDC. And then once I take that, I want to be able to identify what my study objectives are. This is the first step, right? The study design, the enrollment, and the safety protocol. Now remember, we're just looking at protocols here, but you can apply this methodology to any document, right? So your SAP, right, your statistical analysis plan, maybe your ECRF, wherever you're looking to actually automate a document or a guidance that you're going to be working from. And then I can take that corpus of documents and then add this to it, right, if it passes muster. Now, we're never about, let's see if this is going to work. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, we're never about just doing one thing with one point solution. Also, we want to extend our applications so that we can automate where we can automate, but then also I allow the humans, right, the scientists who go and train and study and have the passion and the inspiration to be able to take this to the next step. I'm trying to automate whatever is mundane for you and then go further. So here we're looking at the SAS Viya as a platform first, right? And you saw in that menu, there's a lot of things that I can do. But I'm going to ingest all of these data. So these are protocols that we've actually downloaded with one of our clients, right? And it's not theirs, it was in the public domain already. And we're showing you here how easy it is to connect to these documents, right, and ingest them. Wherever you have them stored, obviously there are some best practices, organizing in your structured folders, maybe some finalized protocols, wherever you want to have that, but you're going to have it in one central location and then pull it. Once I've pulled them, I'll get some of the metadata out of those documents where I want to be able to actually standardize and unify it, because what I'm going to take these protocols through is an extraction process. I'm not just connecting to them, but this is a tool, right? This is part of the ingredient of what I'm actually going to be developing from, right? And then once I take that, I can share it with others, and I can see how I can access all of the documents. If I just want to open them and test it, or if once I've read them and I've confirmed that the metadata is where I need it to be and what it is, what I want it to be, I can then start automating my ingestion. One of the great things about Viya is that it has natural language processing already built into it, even at just the VS level, the visual statistics level, but you can even get a module that is just for text analytics, where I'm extracting unstructured data, looking for patterns within the data set of the things that I want to be able to extract. So if I'm looking for example, the target patient population, right? My inclusion-exclusion criteria, the objectives, the purpose. Mathematically, we've actually now measured the distance between these words, and I can now very easily identify a phrase, right? So it can extract automatically in a structured way and unsupervised way topics and concepts that I may have deliberately put in there or that I'm looking for this therapeutic area. Or I can say, hey, SAS, what am I missing here? Is there a pattern, right? A linguistic pattern or a forensic pattern that I'm looking for? All right, and so now I want to be able to look at how we ingest documents, right? So we already did that. We're gonna go to the next one. Okay, so now that we've ingested the parts of our documents and the components of the protocols or the SAP, right? I want to be able to now structure the protocol and those other documents that we were talking about, right? And so here you can see that this is one of the outputs of visual text analytics, right? Where I'm pulling out numbers, I'm maybe looking at patient totals, right, that I was able to recruit. Maybe if there's a safety profile that I have access to, right, in that CSR, I'll be able to extract that as well. So I'm not only looking for protocols, but I can take the results, right, of previous protocols and see how I can learn from that. Instead of actually making it a slow learning, it's more expedited, right? I can see how many of my previous protocols or my previous studies had an X number of groups, a single arm study, maybe a 3-arm study. There's a lot of variability there. But I've extracted this automatically. Now, if I'm structuring the protocol documents, right, I have now taken out components And now I want to be able to leverage SAS Studio and extract particular components and then put them together. So we first take care of that common aspect, such as like data quality issues, right? Or understanding where what belongs where, right? Purpose belongs under purpose. Inclusion and exclusion criteria belong under eligibility criteria. And then once we have that, I can give you a preview. We're going to categorize, right? And we're going to find things that are in common and categorize. And then we'll take those two NLP tasks, right, to give us richer structure. So I can get topics and concepts out, extracted from this. So not only am I taking this from previous documents, but now I'm taking those concepts and those topics and actually adding it to my next document. I'm feeding into the component and the foundation of what I'm trying to produce, right? And that is the protocol in this case, right? And so once I've been able to do that, I can start looking for, are there safety issues here? I need to be able to maybe have some labeling things, right? So labeling like special populations. Am I looking at a pediatric population? And that should trigger a different kind of corpus of safety and monitoring that I need to be able to take into consideration. If I'm looking at a geriatric population, how late in life can I recruit my patients, for example? And then once I look at that and I'm exploring the topics that are already available to me, I can decide, is this important for this or is this not relevant? Right? Or is this maybe a stratified analysis or a sensitivity analysis instead of a full-blown primary endpoint, right? Because I can still now, I have the flexibility to take a look at what worked last time best, right? And if I want to be able to chunk this up into separate phases or combine some phases, right? It actually is a little more efficient. Now from structuring these documents, right, we're going to go to the next one. I want to be able to take advantage because we're with NLP and LLMs, right, Gen AI in general, we want to be able to identify what minimize hallucinations, right? One of the ways that we do that is retrieval augmented generation. How many here have used that already with an LLM? Post-processing, we have one or two, okay? So this allows you to give your LLM and the algorithm some guidelines, right? Some specifications on, hey, this is not okay. We're not gonna go this way. Where you wanna minimize it and say, no, I can't have somebody who's 1,000,000 years old, right? That's a problem. So that's a very exaggerated example, but you can actually take something like that conceptual and apply your own limits to it. Those are business rules, right? Whether you brute force program them or you take it from a corpus that you're letting it learn from. One other thing, if anybody's going to PharmaSug this year, anybody going to PharmaSug? One. Thank you, Paul. So in PharmaSug, we're actually taking this work and extending it to look at in-context learning. So we're never going to leave RAGs right now, right, for the foreseeable future. But RAGs are really great guardrails, right, because we don't want hallucinations. That's why we have the policies in our corporations that we have, right? But also we want to be able to give guidance on, this is a safety issue, right? And I'm going to give some business rules on maybe a reference table of what a safety or a MEDRA table might look like, right? I can take that MEDRA table and have that in-context learning and take my protocol generation or my what-if scenarios or my safety plans to the next level, right? And that in-context learning could be with domain experts, right? How many here are domain experts and scientists? How many of you work with domain experts and scientists? Yeah? Any of you work with clinicians? Right? So the clinicians are the ones who are telling you, hey, by the way, when I practiced, this is what's important, right? And so if you have that kind of domain captured, you can automate it, right? If there's new information, because we're always discovering new scientific breakthroughs every day, right? So I can ask Dr. Ashita, right, for example, hey, what's new in oncology and bladder cancer? And she can say, well, you know what, there's a landmark paper here, we want to incorporate that. I don't have to go back and retrain, I can just add that and augment it, right? And that's so important in our industry. From our RAGs, right, because I'm looking at time, I want to be able then to, again, upload additional protocols. I don't have to be a programmer. You saw those flows, right? And how many here are developers and programmers? Yes, that's okay, wonderful, right? I don't have to live in the world of flows. I'm not to diss the programmers here. I don't program anymore. I used to, I don't anymore. But you can build it once and have it learn many, many times, right? How many of you love as programmers to be like, hey, I have this new thing here that, can you like just, what if we did this? Right, can we look at it this way? And you're like, I just ran that program and it took me 8 hours to run and my VPN disconnected and now I have to start all over again. Not a good use of your time. But if I have something like this, right, where there is a UI around it, it's a job executed service, and I, the clinician or the scientist or the epi, can upload my document and see how it impacts, now I've taken all that mundane work away from you. I can still, best practices, right? I can still work with you to interpret what I found, okay? But I don't have to rely on you to just reread that one document, right? Or that abstract that I found, okay? And so easily I can choose that file. I forgot that this was a video, I apologize. I can select that file from wherever. It could be a local file, it could be on the cloud or whatever repository and document repository I have, right? And then I can start, I'll pull up a new protocol. I can take a look at what that looks like. This is publicly available, right? And I can add it to my corpus. And now I can start building off of that. And I want to see if there's anything else I want to do here, right? Once I start integrating the documents, I can start interrogating the documents. What's on here? Who is the target patient population in this? Do I really want to still include this protocol? I thought I did, but it's not meeting my population requirements, so therefore I'm not going to do that. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move a little quicker, right? So how does this fit into your today corpus, right? Well, it's an ecosystem. Anybody here have only one platform for everything? No, you have cloud and you have several really great tools that you rely on in your ecosystem for different parts of your work, right? So I'm asking you to think about how and where SaaS Viya today can easily fit into your ecosystem, especially if you're already moving to cloud or you have some, even if it's a private cloud, right? I can use the LLM of my choice, right, behind the scenes. So if you have an agreement with OpenAI, if you have an agreement with an SLM or a Hugging Face or whoever you want, or you're developing your own, there's some people out there that are doing an ensemble and they're developing their own LLMs because it's worth the investment. You're able to ingest it because we're LLM agnostic. We're here to give you the governance around that LLM to help you automate and leverage the technology that's being out there, that's being developed, but I want to be able to take that further and then start incorporating these automations. So for the CROs in the world here who are helping and working with the sponsors, how many CROs do I have in the audience? Right? This helps you do this really quickly because you have a big corpus for your sponsor. So if you're always working with J&J, if you're always working with Pfizer, you know how they work in that particular therapeutic area. This will increase your margins by actually getting this done quicker. So now I've actually ingested the, I have 3 minutes left, okay. So we might not get to all of this. Please find me at the booth afterwards, right? I can enter my initial study characteristics because I want to now bench my new protocol against what was done before, right? I can identify the number of trials or a number of individuals that I want in that trial. How many protocols do I have access to? What if there's a new therapeutic area that my company wants to start exploring, maybe in some orphan drugs or in some rare diseases? I can take things out of CTTI or whatever is available publicly first, right? If there's some academic papers out there, you can bring in that corpus as well. Once I start filtering, I'll be able to identify what those trials look like. I can identify similar studies and incorporate them into the flow. So those of you who are developing and helping your companies on the back end, you bring that in as a custom step. Once you have that custom step set up, right, you can borrow it, it's validated now, it's QC'd. You don't have to worry about bringing in Lego blocks that are always having to start from scratch, right? You have already established it as a process, you're just building the process from your Lego blocks. Once I identify that and I confirm my background documents, I'm able then to start comparing my study characteristics. This is a really great time to start looking at what if scenarios, right? I have a target patient population, it's very strict, for example, traditional or conventional inclusion criteria, what if I relaxed an exclusion criteria like chest pain? Because that could be anxiety related and not necessarily a cardiovascular event. Well, it might expand my ability to recruit more patients, right? But I'm introducing some more noise, right? So what do I do with that noise? Or what if I use machine learning and I throw in real world data and I find other comorbidities that might be associated with either my inclusion criteria or the outcome? I can then say, what happens then? And it might give me a smaller, more precise number of patients that I have access to. Once I do that, I can look at those 3 scenarios. Where are these patients? And then I can test my hypothesis. So I believe I was talking to somebody yesterday about it's great that you can actually run these what if scenarios, but are you actually looking at the downstream impact of being able to keep these patients in or out, or having smaller or larger number of patients to potentially recruit? And once I introduce that noise, for example, because I've removed an exclusion criteria, can I look at that downstream impact and run a simulated, quote unquote, study? Well, I can do that with a lot of machine learning and embedded predictive outcomes algorithms that you would have normally done in your clinical trial, as well as maybe some new ways, right, that you're looking at ad hoc analyses. So I'm going to stop at simulation. Right. Once I've tested my hypothesis, I can, while I'm planning for the study, as well as while the study is running, can I start looking at how the study is operating? Am I meeting my costs? Am I meeting my targets? Because I've already tested it, this is now probability of success on steroids, right? In a lot of different steps. And then I can actually say, while do I need to be able to bring in a new site? How is that going to affect my costs and otherwise, right? And then once you take all of these simulations and these pieces, you can run it through our generator and generate a protocol that is going to be more likely to succeed in the long run. Thank you for your time today. I am over time, and Joy's been very, very patient with me, so I appreciate you all. If you have any questions, I will be at the booth, at the Health and Life Sciences booth back in there in the corner, and I'm happy to have longer discussions with you.